Hey everyone. Welcome to our first panel of the day. Thank you all for joining us. Our panel this morning is called How the Graph Community is Uniting People Worldwide. And I'm super excited to have the opportunity to moderate this panel with these three awesome panelists because community is something that I've been working on a lot in Web3. So let me quickly introduce myself, and then I'll pass it on to our panelists for introductions for themselves as well. My name is Diana Chen. I'm the founder of Rehash DAO. We are a Web3 content and media DAO, and I also host the Rehash podcast, which is the first community-driven Web3 podcast where all of the guests we have on the season were nominated by and voted on by our DAO contributors. Before this, I led content at Rabbit Hole, an on-chain credentialing platform, and Unstoppable Domains, an NFT domain name product. So, Cami, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Camila Ramos. I go by Cami. I am a developer relations engineer at EdgeNode. I'm also a core team at Women Build Web3, which is a DAO focused on developing female and non-binary engineering talent in Web3.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Ewing. I'm a delegator, and I'm a member of the Graphtronauts Telegram group admin team. And I recently took on a role as community representative for Pinax, who will be providing a fire hose service for the indexers.
And I'm Derek, founder of DataNexus. We just recently upgraded our services to where we are now indexing on the mainnet. So very excited about that. I've been a admin with a curation station for a while, and I'm also a member of the Advocates DAO. So, yeah.
Thank you guys for your intros. Just to provide a little bit more context into the communities that you're part of for our audience, can each of you give a little background and context into how your specific community was originally formed and what the mission of your community is today? And Cami, you want to kick us off with yours?
Yeah, so the two communities that I'm a part of, EdgeNode and Women Build Web3, they're actually really, really closely related, and one kind of was born out of the other. So yeah, Women Build Web3 came together by accident around Web3Con, which was a virtual hackathon 2 months ago at this point. And we were just a group of women who wanted to hack, who wanted to build. For a lot of us, it was our first time participating in a Web3 hackathon. And we kind of just wanted a community to get together, have a place to learn, have a place to build together. And at this time, I had just finished coming out of like a personal research project on the Graph protocol. So I got us together and was like, okay, a lot of us don't know how to build in Web3 necessarily, but as it was kind of mentioned earlier, the Graph is a really good place to start because if you're coming from Web2, you're probably familiar with GraphQL. You don't have to write any Solidity code, so it's a really easy entry point. So I put together this workshop for our group, and actually Tegan and Yaniv and Nader all showed up to it and helped me lead this workshop. And yeah, that led to us participating in this hackathon, winning a bunch of prizes. And then after the hackathon was over, we kind of looked around and was like, well, now what? Like, we did the thing. What do we do now? And we kind of all just decided we should form this community and form this DAO and try to proliferate the message of what it means to build in Web3 and actually provide training to do that.
Awesome. Chris?
Thanks. Graphtronauts is a Telegram group, and we're predominantly non-technical. There's a lot of different people that are represented in there, but we focus on delegation and assisting delegators with the different aspects of that process, whether they're interested in getting their wallet set up and all the different steps that go into those things. We have a bunch of different tooling and the Graphtronauts app, which helps delegators track their with the different indexers that they have and the subgraphs that those indexers have allocated towards, so they can track all of their returns on those things. Like I said, we're primarily non-technical. I like to offer the disclaimer that my wife is the one that programs our TV remotes at home. We have like 10 of them. Somebody else can handle that. They don't do what I want them to do when I'm the one that does that. But just because you may not have technical coding skills doesn't mean that you don't have something to contribute to the community. Each of us have different backgrounds, and that gives us different perspectives on what the graph can do and the different elements of Web3 and what some of the real world applications are of some of these, the new technology that's coming out.
Yeah, and I'll speak specifically just on the curation station. So when the mainnet was launched and people could then deploy subgraphs onto the Graph's mainnet, there was initially, I think, 10 subgraphs that were part of kind of the launch partners, and then there were a whole slew of other subgraphs that were deployed. And it's a curator's job to identify which subgraphs are going to receive, or which subgraphs do they expect to receive query traffic. And so due to the way that the barrier to entry as a curator is very low, and anyone can start curating. And we had a whole bunch of community members that were all trying to do the same amount of work, or they were trying to identify and verify various subgraphs, and all just kind of duplicating work. So we had the idea of, let's kind of band together and let's share our knowledge base. That way, we're acting more efficient as a protocol. And there's certain actions that a curator will do in terms of reaching out to the developers that deployed the subgraph. And we didn't want 200 people all reaching out to one person and asking the same question, and that person has to answer it 5 times or whatever. So we said, great, let's share our knowledge base. That way we can all take more intelligent actions. So so that's kind of the community that I'd be looking at there. But it started just with the launch of the mainnet and making sure that we're acting efficiently.
Very cool. Thank you all for providing that context. I think one really cool thing that all of your communities do, Women Build Web3, Graphtronauts, and Curation Station, is that you're able to attract a contributor base from all over the world. And so the reason I think this is important is because when we look back to Web 2 and some of the mistakes that we might have made with Web 2 and Silicon Valley, I would say that one of the biggest mistakes was maybe allowing too homogenous of a group of people to build Web 2, the whole, not just the web, but really as our lives become increasingly digital, the way that we work and live and interact all the time. And when we think forward to building Web 3, which is the future version of the web, if we really want to create a future version of the web that serves and benefits everyone globally, then I think we really have to make sure that we're taking an input from and involving people from all over the world to build this future version of the web. So I'd love to hear from each of your individual communities, what are some things that your community specifically has done to ensure that you're attracting diverse talent and also creating a space within your community that feels just safe and comfortable for everybody to be in, regardless of their background. You want to start, Camila?
Yeah. So for Women Build Web3, so what you just mentioned is a core part of our value system. And if we're building technology that everyone's going to use, we need to make sure that everyone is represented in the building process so that we don't build things that are harmful unintentionally to certain groups of people. So that's one of our core values is diversity of geography, of language, of country, of skill set. And for us, we have we're a relatively small group, but we do have a big set of us in Nigeria. We have a few of us in South America. A lot of us are in North America. I think there's a small group in Europe. And honestly, what we do to try to make sure that everyone is included and has a space to come to is really, it sounds kind of silly, but it makes such a big impact. And it's something that we're actually dealing with now is time zones and scheduling meetings at times that everyone can attend and not just catering to the people in North America. And that's something that myself, I've been guilty of unintentionally where I'm oh yeah, let's just meet at 4 p.m. PST. I live in California. That's a great time for me. And people in the DAO will be oh yeah, that's 3 in the morning for me or 6 in the morning for me. And that's something that we as a group are trying to align ourselves better on to make sure that we don't become guilty of this and make this part of our culture where we're really focused and centered on people in North America.
The Graphtronauts mantra is we rise by lifting others, and we endeavor to provide a space where people are encouraged and expected to learn. A lot of the people that come into the delegator community, or just as holders that come into the community initially, they have questions as to what the graph is, what it does, and the purpose of the group is to provide an informal community setting where we can work with some of these people and answer what some of them think are dumb questions, but there really aren't any dumb questions because we all started somewhere. Some of us are still down here, but we're getting there. We'll get there eventually. But we want to provide a welcoming, a space that's available for anybody. It's accessible for anybody to come into. Most of us that are here flew on an airplane to get here. I seriously doubt if there's anybody here that can give me a very detailed mechanical description of that plane. You just knew that you got on it, it got you where you needed to be, and it got you down the ground, and you're here. We don't all have to understand every single little bit of code that goes into the graph to appreciate what it does and what it can accomplish and what it enables. So the purpose of the Graphtronauts is to provide a learning space for people to maybe take those first couple steps into becoming involved within the graph community.
Yeah, and with the curation station, we really try to leverage the diversity of background, especially professional background, because the graph protocol, it's a very technical protocol, but the role of a curator benefits from a lot of different professional backgrounds. So of course, if you have developer skills, if you know how to break apart a subgraph and look at its various parts, you can easily see like, okay, this is indexing X, Y, and Z information, and this is how it would be used. Like that is definitely valuable. But maybe you're in marketing and you can see like, okay, so this subgraph was deployed by this company, and then you take a look at their website and you know how to piece apart the marketing for the website to predict what's going to happen with their site and their application. That's equally as valuable as someone that has developer skills. So the curator role, although it is, it's called the semi-technical role, we have a lot of non-technical people that also fulfill that role. And so having the multiple different points of view from within our community, we're able to get a better understanding of what the whole world will think of something when you hear, the developer says this, and someone from marketing says this, and a design person says this, and you can aggregate all that information and just make better decisions. So yeah.
I love that. That's super inspirational. And I'm sure, with all of the benefits that come with having a global contributor base, there are challenges as well. Like you mentioned, Cami, with the time zones. It's really hard to coordinate with people all over the world. I'm sure there's language barriers too. I'm sure there are other issues. What are some other challenges that you guys have experienced with working with a global contributor base, and what are some of the solutions that you found to be most helpful? And I know, Derek, I think, we spoke before about how you have contributors from, countries like Syria even. What have been some of your unique experiences or learnings or challenges from working with people from different parts of the world? Do you want to kick us off? And
yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
We can go in reverse?
It's very interesting because also in the curation station, we do have a lot of people that are also subgraph developers. And so that the curator role and a subgraph developer role, there's kind of just a natural cohesion there. But it's interesting when you're working with people from all over the globe. Obviously, there's the time zone difference, but also just from various countries. I've worked with people from countries like Syria, which is, normally that's working from the US, that's a sanctioned country, which when you look at the censorship resistance aspect to Web3, I'm able to produce a product of value with other people that, can equally produce that product, and we build something together and that has value to other people, and there's exchange for it. And, a lot of the times with the anonymous nature of Web3, I don't necessarily know the person's name that I'm working with or, where they're located. And oftentimes you find that out after the fact type of thing. And so I wanted to comment on how interesting that is to be able to work with people regardless of their geographical location, regardless of their name, regardless of their skin color, political affiliation, religion, any of that stuff. It's just purely boiled down to, okay, well, what is it that you can do? and what is the value of the thing that you can do. And yeah, I find that to be a very interesting aspect of Web3.
I think something else that I've noticed within a lot of the different communities, any group that forms, whether it's just a bunch of friends that enjoy playing the same game, whether it's something like this, whether it's a bunch of people that enjoy going out to drink, you have a common interest. You have something that ties you together. And a community that can focus on that uniting factor and what draws them together over the different things that they have that they may disagree about. That's when a community can grow, and that's what enables a community to grow. You have to be able to focus on and pay attention to what your objective is, what your common interest is, whatever the original purpose of that foundation is. If you can do that, that's what separates the communities that grow from the communities that just fragment and evaporate over time.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that, having clearly set core values that everybody can fall back on. And then as long as you're all aligned on that, then, you can pretty much face any troubles that come your way, any disagreements. You just go back to the core values and use that as your guiding principle. Cami, did you have anything to add?
Just on the question of, some challenges that come with the global contributor base, I was in Rio a few months ago at this point for ETH Rio, and it was amazing. It was exciting. So many locals were there, and I kind of just overheard a conversation asking, this group of women, just curiously asking, I think the person obviously meant no harm, but they were just like, hey, why don't you have an ENS name? Like, it would make your life so much easier. You don't have to remember your address. And I was overhearing, and the women were just like, yeah, the gas fees for an ENS address right now are like half of what we make in a whole month here in Brazil. And that moment for me was like when a lot of things changed in my head, because I'm from Colombia. I was born there. I spent part of my childhood there. And I'm very aware of, what it means to have a global contributor base. But that for me, it just made everything so real when it's like, us up here, we have the privilege, and probably everyone in this room, we have the privilege of playing with like new stuff and buying ENS names and squatting on ENS names and finding cool ones that people might want in the future. When it's like people who in other countries, they don't even have the means to like play in the same way that we do. And for me, that's something that as a developer relations person for Edge and Node, as I'm trying to grow our awareness and our adoption at a global scale, that's something that I'm always trying to be conscious of and keep in mind, that we're not all at the same playing field, especially when you're talking about South America and Africa specifically, where it's like, yeah, what we spend on like gas fees just to like mint, I don't know, an NFT is like, yeah, that's like half a month's or even a whole month's of our salary. So just being mindful of that and what we ask of our contributors. And that's why a big part for us is like making sure we have a solid treasury to support the things that we want to do, and so that it doesn't fall on our members to do personally.
Yeah, wow, that really puts things in perspective. And I think Thanks, Cami, for sharing that. We've got about 5 minutes left of this panel, and I just want to leave everybody with some actionable tips, advice that you guys have, maybe for any community builders that are in the audience, or just anybody working in Web3. I feel like whether you're a developer or a founder or a community manager, you don't have to have the community manager title in your role in order for you to be building community like you guys are every day. So to leave everybody with some actionable tips, what are some of the best pieces of advice you have for people working in Web3 who are trying to build meaningful community and a global contributor base when they go out, and things that they should keep in mind or actionable steps that they should take?
Yeah, maybe I'll start because I think I have a really great story I also want to share really quickly. So Derek, I didn't even know he had a name or a face. To me, he was just like a PFP for a very...
I do have a face, I promise.
Yeah, up until 5 minutes ago, I didn't know if he was a real person. But 7-8 months ago, when I first started playing with the Graph protocol as a developer, I don't know how, but I found Derek on Twitter. He's really active in the Graph community, and I was confused about some stuff when I was trying to make a subgraph, and I just DM'd him on Twitter. And it's just so serendipitous and amazing that now 8 months later, we're sitting on this panel together.
Yeah, we happen to share a panel now.
Yeah. And my tip is just like, don't be afraid to reach out. And I know that might seem intimidating, but truly, honestly, and I think everyone kind of feels the same way, is that like the community in Web3 is generally very welcoming, very down to help. And he's someone like, he doesn't even follow me back on Twitter to this day, but he like answers my questions all the time. I like call him. I call him literally like once a week. I'm like, hey, how do you do this? And so, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions. Most people are down to help. And the cool thing about EduNode is we have 2 really amazing DevRel people on a team where our whole job is just to help you with your subgraph stuff.
Derek's following you right now.
Yeah, you're now being followed.
I come from a family construction company. And if any of you have ever worked closely with family, you know that you're not going to agree on everything all of the time. It's just not going to happen. Within these communities, if you have everybody that's thinking the same or that has the same opinion on things, there's only one person in there that actually has that opinion, the rest of them aren't thinking. So you need to be focused on, like I mentioned earlier, focus on the things that unite you, focus on the things that, like Diana mentioned with the core values. That needs to be your objective. It's not about me, it's about what we can accomplish together.
Love that. Yeah, I'll just kind of back up what you said there, because it's interesting from where I stand. I feel like I was the one that was always asking questions to people, and so I spent probably 7 or 8 months, and I apologized a lot in the Discord, just saying, hey guys, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions. One day I'll be of use and of value, but until then, just kind of bear with me, type of thing. And now, I've had the chance where I can then go and pass that education on. But I kind of took a bit of a shameless, route to that, where I was like, hey, I know I'm about to be annoying. And, constantly people were like, oh no, not at all. Don't worry about it. And then and after a while I was like, this just kind of feels like the normal in this space. So I would suggest that, you might feel like you're going to be annoying asking questions, but 9 times out of 10, people that are working in this space are very passionate about this space, and they would love to talk to you about it. So I would ask your questions, make sure that you understand, and make sure that you know what it is that you're working with, and then from there you can then pass that knowledge on to other people. So I would say that that's definitely an important aspect. And then earlier you touched on making sure that you have stable agreements at the start when you're starting a community. And that goes, I think that's one of the most important things, because as you go down the road, your community is going to grow and you're going to adopt new things or new practices. But as long as you're staying within your core goals, it's easy to stay on track. Once you start adopting things that kind of take things off your core goals, then at that point, it becomes a little bit nebulous, where one person thinks that is kind of, along the lines, and another person thinks that kind of goes against what you're doing. And so just keeping to that, I would say, is very important.
It just ensures that you're having these conversations on common ground, essentially, is what it is. Yeah, and I have to echo the not being afraid to put yourself out there and learn. I got into this space through podcasting. I was hosting a crypto podcast when I knew nothing about crypto. So I wasn't just sliding into people's DMs with questions. All of my stupid questions are out there still for everybody to listen to. So, talk about learning in public. That is really, truly the fastest way to learn. And everybody has been so kind and gracious, at least to me, and it sounds like to you guys as well. So thank you, panelists, so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this panel. Hopefully you learned something about community, and thank you to the Graph for hosting this and for just doing such a great job of building a global community within Web3.
Thank you.